Hey guys, it's Ariel from the Work and Play podcast. If you're getting any value from this channel, and I mean anything from the tutorials to the podcast to the random videos that you see on this channel, then I just ask that you do one thing. Please subscribe. Subscribe and share this to anyone that you think this resonates with, and drop a comment below so I know what other things that you want to see next. Now let's get back to the episode.
I think it was just knowing that I didn't ever, because the enterprise was much longer period of time. And so it was just kind of like, when I left there, that was more like, wow, I was fully vested retirement wise and different things when they actually you would get a 100% of your 401k. Whereas with Wells Fargo, I hadn't gotten that far. And so I think it was just I already knew I wanted not to have this job and they transferred me. And of course, I'm making good money. So it's it was more just oh my God, I'm about to walk away from this, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm just going to figure it out because I knew that corporate was not where I ever wanted to be. And even though I wanted to be a lawyer at one point, I definitely by now had come to the realization that I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. And so I was just yeah. And there is no amount of money you could pay me to go back.
Ooh, that's strong.
There's no amount of money. I had a friend who, anyway, a long story, but I won't tell that part. But he just basically got an offer for a job, and he was they're going to pay me I think it was $90,000, something crazy at a job.
This is 2021?
This is not 2020.
Okay.
This is a couple years ago.
Okay,
and
gotcha. He
was saying 90,000, and I was that's still not enough, man. And he was what? I was there's no amount of money. I'm telling you, they can pay you, but you have to like the job. It's not the money. You have to like the job.
Absolutely.
And so he ended up taking the job because he's but it's this much money. And, I was yeah, you got to do what you got to do, man. Yeah. Took the job. And then, a year later, he was back in where he was when I was talking to him because he was yeah, I didn't like it. And I'm exactly. Yeah. It's not about the money. It always comes down to that. I call, this is probably not what I should say to people on your podcast, but I call it legalized slavery because it's they're leasing your talent, right? For a fraction of what it's worth. And, in the book we read in the morning meetup when that guy was bringing in, how much money was he bringing in? Some millions of dollars, and they were only paying him $70,000. It was something crazy.
Remember. Which book was that?
It was that a story in, what was the book we read before?
The one thing.
Wasn't it Atomic Habits? Was it in Atomic Habits?
Atomic Habits. Oh, so when he was a beach bum, you talking about the beach?
No, not Slight Edge. The guy who was working for the brokerage firm, and he made only a little bit for bringing in all this money. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
The scenario, it rings a bell. Yeah. I'm that's the reality.
But that, when I heard that, I was that's what I'm talking about. You work your butt off. You make the company millions of dollars. Yeah. And they pay you a fraction of it. Yeah. And understand, and maybe you wouldn't have their Rolodex. You wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have that. But I was if you could do that for them, you can do it for you.
Absolutely. Well, I think we should certainly get into the mindset of that shift because I think it's important no matter why you leave. Yeah. That legalized slavery, I actually really do resonate with that. But, your reality of whatever your situation is, just be clear that you are working and then you're making the money a substantial amount of change. Yeah. I think those realities are important.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But in this case, we're talking about you and your realization. So your mindset is, I will figure it out in acting. And you, at that time, I know you just said you'll never go back to you'll never go back to corporate. Yeah. Was your mindset there?
Oh, yeah, when you left? When I left Wells Fargo, you say that, but I think the words never and always make you a liar every time. And so, no, I've never worked back in corporate, but when I said it, I meant it. But did I know if that was going to be true? I don't know.
I just want to take a pause real quick because the words never and always make you a liar every time. Yeah. Thank you so much for dropping that. I'm going to replay that and take a note. Okay. So was acting your plan A, and did you have a plan B?
So acting was, I think I was still, I had just gotten into it. So, I don't know. And I never really, I'm going to be honest and say, I didn't think I was that good. Mm-hmm. I was entertaining by far. That I was doing practically like stand up and entertaining my customers when they were waiting for cars. And that was what I've been doing throughout my career, because I've always been a person who is very, I like to use humor. I love to make, I love to entertain and to, be sort of like, yeah, look at me,
What was your acting space?
What do you mean? What was my acting space? I've done stand up. I took acting classes here. I went on some auditions, commercial. I went on a few theatrical. Theatrical, the difference between a commercial and theatrical, obviously, is commercials for commercials. Theatrical is for TV shows and movies. I didn't go on any movies unless they were short films.
Okay.
I did some theatrical, very minimal, because it also helps to get like the real TV shows when you have an agent and certain things. But I mean, it's not impossible. I'm not going to make excuses. I honestly, when I got into the room, I was always somebody who was entertaining people off of me and not off of someone else's words or whatever. And when I was a kid, I did live theater. Okay. Like I was entertaining a live audience. When you go into an audition room, it's you and somebody with a camera like this, and they're sitting maybe over to the left, and you have to say slate, "Hi, my name's Bryn Drescher and I'm this and I'm that." And then it's like, okay, we'll say the line, and it'll be like one line. And then it's like, okay, thank you. And you're like, okay. And then that's it. You might get a redirect. Could you try it one more time this way? But you don't always get that. And so sometimes you spend all that time waiting outside, and they'll have 5 people come in and they'll say, okay, everybody, we're just going to explain to you how this is going to go. And then we'll call you in one at a time. And you're in the room for maybe 5 minutes. And then that's it.
Oh my goodness.
So I was always better in the car than I was in the room, because I was so nervous about getting it right or wanting to do it perfectly that sometimes I just felt like I didn't know how to and I'm sure this is not uncommon amongst new actors. And had I stayed the course, who knows? But I think after a while and going through some of the adversity that actors face, I was like, this isn't booking me or paying me the bills per se. I mean, I booked little things here and there. Nothing you would have seen. Don't look for me.
Googling.
Yeah. Anyway, and then I just ultimately was like, yeah, I think, and then I took a stand-up comedy class, and then there's this interesting foray into a multi-level marketing company, and they had a training in Texas. And I went, and there was a speaker there, a motivational speaker, and he did all these characters, and he was like entertaining all these people, but he was being himself, and doing whatever. And I'm sure he had scripted out the lines and whatnot, but they weren't written for him. And when I saw that, I was like, that's what I want to do. Not necessarily work for a multi-level marketing company and train them, but what he was doing, like edutainment, I was like, that's me.
Edutainment. Yeah. Did you make that up?
No. Other people use it.
Okay, that's nice.
I don't think it's mine. I mean, I've said it before, but I don't think it's mine.
Okay, that's cool. So, oh my gosh. Okay, so you realize, so that's what I want to follow that thought.
Yeah, sorry.
So let's.
I'm all over the place.
No. I do want to follow that thought. It's so interesting. There's 2 things, and I'll say them, and then if we go back to both, then that's good. But you grew up kind of in corporate, and you always had this thing that told you wanted to be an actress, and when you finally got your shot, you went for it, and you went for it 100% for a time. And I can only imagine what it feels like to go from corporate, making the salary you were making, having the control you had, to being in a room where all you had to do was say a line. Yeah. So I'm curious what that had, what type of hit did your self-esteem take?
I will say this is probably something you'll be shocked by, but I felt wealthier as not a corporate person than I did as a corporate person.
Okay, please help me understand that.
Now, granted, the money was not the same. I want to be clear about that. I was definitely close to 6 figures. I never got to 6 figures in the corporate space. I was close. But what it was is you live differently when you make more money. You spend more when you make more. And so I had a house, I had a mortgage, I had all these things. And so when I was in this free world of being an actor / bootstrap entrepreneur, if you want to call it, where I'm just like looking for jobs because I got to pay my rent, you know? Yeah. It just felt more freeing. It felt like more liberating. And so, I don't know. It's kind of interesting because when I stopped being an athlete, a lot of athletes go through a loss of identity. When I stopped working in corporate, I just don't think I ever had my identity wrapped up in either. Although I think it's because I've always been a very confident, extroverted person. And so maybe I was attached to that. So if there was ever a time I couldn't be that, like staying behind a computer all day or whatever, those are the times I was like, this is not for me. Oh. But not, if I had an opportunity to interact with the public or be, a bit of myself, then I was cool.
Okay. I like that. I think that is really good to know. And it makes sense, of why you might have even had to go out and try acting in order for you to realize, okay, this is what it was that I needed to look at. So now we're here. Right. I'm glad I didn't forget.
I know. I took you so many places. So keep me on track.
No, I love it. So now you are at this MLM motivational speaking session, and this man is edutating you.
Right.
And you said, aha. Yeah. So where did that aha take you?
So I found... so there was a book I was reading at the time. I was reading Secrets of a Millionaire Mind. It's by a guy named T. Harv Eker. And and in the book, which by the way, the book was his lead magnet. Okay. Knowing this now, not then, but now I was like,
into the funnel.
Right. So I'm like reading this book and there's other people, and if you'll find in the MLM world and personal development world, they very much overlap. So a lot of people already knew about, and actually somebody from the MLM is the one who gave me the book. Okay. So I'm reading it because I'm just, like killing time between sessions or whatever. And I was just fascinated by this book. And then it says in there, he's got this 3-day mastermind weekend called Secrets of a Millionaire Mind weekend, but it's like $2,500, some crazy price. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to go, but like, it's so expensive and whatever. I don't know. And somebody's like, well, actually, I think he's having one in LA. And it turns out that you don't pay that. So it's like, the value is $2,500, but it's actually big slash. Right. All the stuff that I know now. But anyway, so it was like the next weekend and, it was like $97 for 3 days of like, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be there. And so I went and they sell you into this thing called Quantum Leap, which ended up being way more expensive than the $2,500 that I was talking about previously, but I just made it work. And, they had a program called Train the Trainer. And Train the Trainer was teaching you how to be a speaker on the stage and how to do all the things. And they had Train the Trainer 1 and Train the Trainer 2. And it was just like a boot camp for speakers and how to really be a facilitator and lead from the stage. And so I learned all that. And
thank you so much for watching the Work and Play podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Boss Up Conference, which is a community for entrepreneurs, CEOs, celebrities, and corporate executives to come together, network, and solve some problems. Thank y'all so much for being supporters of the Work and Play podcast. And thank you for watching the Work and Play podcast and all the episodes before. Now let's get back to the episode.
I think it was just like, this is what I've always wanted to do, be up in front of people, educate and inspire, because even before I had moved, I had gotten into The Secret and the mindset stuff, and it had just started. The Secret, I call it like training wheels, like for like opening your mind to stuff, because I think The Secret is definitely expansive. And I know a lot of critics talk about it in a way like, oh, you're supposed to think positive. I'm like, they didn't say that in The Secret, but whatever. Everybody's like, oh yeah, they said just sit there and it'll happen. I'm like, well, that's not what they said, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. But it is like just the tip of the iceberg. And so I had just gotten into that. And then T. Harv Eker's, my year with him, basically, not him personally, but his training company, was just amazing. I took leadership stuff. I did a whole bunch of stuff. And that kind of started me on this like hunger for personal development. Wow. And, so I got into that, and that helped me with my leadership skills, because they had a leadership camp, and you had to basically take turns being leaders throughout the camp, and definitely a lot of bristling up against yourself as well as other people and different leadership styles. And, you know, and ultimately what you learn is you're just wrestling with you, but you think it's the other person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Until you become a mental performance coach and you realize you create your own.
I may have realized that before I became a mental performance coach, but not quite as in depth as I do now, for sure.
That's cool. Okay. So, you realized that's what you wanted to do. You learned a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
At what point did you decide, you know, what was the next transition from acting to next?
Yeah. So I just ended up like, you know, money becomes like the thing, like how am I going to make money, you know? So a little bit of a focus, and I kind of did some odd jobs. I was doing virtual assistant for someone here and doing social media management for someone there. And then ultimately, you know, I gotten into Periscope, did a bunch of live videos. I mean, these are not all in exact succession, and I'd done life coaching and different things here and there, but I didn't have anything like nailed down, like who was I serving? It was just like, I just wanted to help people. And, so once I did the social media management at the higher level and was getting paid a good amount of money to do it, like per contract, I'm not saying I did it for a long time. I just realized that I wasn't the person that was supposed to be doing this. Like I had a good vision, and I can definitely give somebody their social media plan. But what I realized is the people that wanted to pay for what I wanted to charge wanted me to do it.
Yeah.
They didn't want the plan. They wanted the person that was going to do the plan. And so they could set it and forget it. And I was like, I don't want to do that. My personality is not meant to be sitting here and doing SEO and all that stuff. So, and that's search engine optimization for those that don't know. I know you know. So anyway, long story short, I cannot remember the situation where I was like, I should do stuff for athletes. And it could have been someone else's suggestion, like, hey, you're an athlete. Maybe the athletes would be a good way to go. I don't know. But I guess I found out about something that was happening, or I was looking up something like, where do coaches go? Maybe I should work with sports coaches or something like that. And I went to a basketball coaches clinic, and I was just like, okay. And I was just like, hey, I'm a mindset. I don't even know if I was using mental performance coach, because I don't know if I knew it at that time, but I was like, basically I called it mental conditioning. So like I work with athletes on their mental game, and, no one was there looking for me, because they were there to get better as coaches. But I talked to them, and I got one coach that said, yeah, I'll give you a shot. Well, I developed a relationship that eventually turned into her giving me a shot with her team. And then I just expanded it from there and found out that I love this. Like I'm really good at it. And I was just doing what I knew. And then eventually the pandemic forced me to actually start to formalize my teaching. And so really even though I've been doing it for a while, I hadn't really like put it into a system.
That makes sense.
I was just like, whatever I had for them, that's what I was teaching them. And, you know, and then I was like, well, what if I, you know, took all these steps that I've been teaching and put it in a process? And so that's what happened.
Okay. So I think that is definitely really, really important. And I'm curious there's one thing that I'm curious about that led to where we are today, which is that one relationship. And you might not remember how that relationship developed, but.
Oh, the coach that gave me the shot?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just, her name's Dana, and, she was just at the clinic. She was really nice. And we, you know, you go to different, you know, like when you go to conferences, they have breakout sessions or whatever. And we were just in the same room together, and, you know, you do networking, you find out, and like, oh, what do you do? What do you do? I'm like, well, actually I do this. And I'm actually, you know, this is what I want to teach. And she's like, oh, that's so important, you know?
Okay.
And I talked to plenty of coaches that were like, oh yeah, for sure. Call me. Like, let's get in touch or whatever. But, we just really hit it off like energetically. And it was like, you know, and she was, I guess, going to make a move from the place she was at. And so when she made the move to start her own league, that's when she was like, I want to have this as part of my program. And it's so wonderful to have a coach that like wants to embed that into the program versus like, hey, we'll send them if they need it. But it was like, we had a mandatory day where we were dedicated to that practice. So that was awesome.
I was going to ask which Bryn caught her attention. Like, was it that, did you guys, the conversation on acting?
No. I mean, I don't mention the acting thing very often. I mean, I think if you see me enough and you see me at a party, sometimes it feels like I'm holding court because, some people say, well, like I'm entertaining or I'm holding but then I'm not really being like, I don't know. It's like feeling like I have to entertain, but not, I don't know. But I'm just being myself, and I'm really good at, I think I've found that what made me good at with customer service as well as up until then was just that I can make great conversation with anybody. I think it's a skill that I got from my mom. My mom was she could make anybody a friend, and I seem to have gotten that gene. And my friend said the other day, we were on a camping trip together, and she was like, I've always admired just how you can like talk to anybody about anything. And for me, it's just like, it's another human being. Just have a conversation with them, Right. And so whatever, if I know that you live in this area and I know the team that you might be, there was a girl on the trip that had a Duke hat on, and I was like, oh, really? You got to wear that around here? Because I went to Michigan State. So basketball wise, we're kind of rivals. I mean, I'm not saying Duke would say we're in the same league as them, but Michigan State's pretty good in basketball. So it's just anything I can do to find that connection, I'm looking for it. And so we just had great conversations, and there was valuable things at the clinic, even though they were sometimes just about X's and O's, and I didn't really necessarily need that, but it's also good to see how coaches operate and what they're looking for. And so there was a lot of value in being there. But yeah, I don't remember our specific conversations, but I do remember just like her being like, yeah, for sure. And then we just stayed in touch. And in the end, it turned out to be the one shot I needed. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I ask you that just because I think it's very energetic how you network. I think networking is so intimidating to some people, and I try to break it down as much as I can for like anyone who's more like, I just need to know, like, should I talk about the hat or whatever? And sometimes people need that step by step, but it's great to hear, even in that situation, even though you don't have a specific, how you can break it down and say that Duke hat is what allows you to get that in. And so you allow energy to take you from there.
Yep.
So now you're getting your start as a mental performance coach. And so you're getting the X's and O's, you're seeing everything. How did you get your start, and where'd you get your footing?
So, I mean, of course, there's always those moments. I think a lot of people, particularly high-performing people that come from corporate, very familiar with the term imposter syndrome. And so you have those moments, but the advantages that I didn't share with you is that I also work for a nonprofit in the youth space and have been speaking for years. And so I didn't really need to, I wasn't reinventing the wheel. I was just taking what I knew and using the application of sports. And so all these years of speaking on these topics and then just saying, oh, well, I can teach them this because this is the same stuff. Yeah. But learning through the lens of sports, because sports is just a vehicle. Ultimately, we get into sport because we want to do something that we think is fun, that we want to excel in, that we want to develop friendships and social circles around, and so many different reasons. And so similarly, I think the biggest game we all play is life. Mm-hmm. And so if I can teach somebody about how to be their best selves in life, I can teach somebody using the lens of sport because I came from that world and I was using sports analogies anyway. So it's oh, this is perfect. Now they'll really understand what I'm saying, So because basketball was my favorite sport. I only played 2 years in high school. I was not successful in basketball. I was far more successful in track, but it worked out. You have
to understand. It's like to be a mental performance coach, you have to understand mentally and conceptually how the game works.
Exactly. Not physically. I don't need to know all the mechanics. That's right. In fact, sometimes I joke. I do hyperbole, and I make sure so that's how it works, guys. You hit it in the end zone, right? And they're like, what? And I'm like, I know it's called a basket, but I like to make it seem like I don't know what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and they're like, coach, but where did you come from? You don't know anything about basketball. I'm like, I know plenty about basketball. I know about football. I know about, because my brother played football. I know about basketball. I understand how the game works, but it's just a lot of fun to mess with them sometimes.
I gotcha. So as a mental performance coach, and I keep saying it so that it can just stick to my mind.
It's just a title. I want to talk about that just really quickly. It sounds great, but I'm just somebody who works with the mindset of an athlete. And yes, it is the end goal is to improve performance, but ultimately my end goal is to make them amazing people.
I'm glad you said that, because that's literally what my question. I was going to ask, one, the result of your athletes, right? But then from a global perspective, what are the results of working with someone like you?
Yeah. So it's really important to understand that, and we talked about this a little bit in Atomic Habits when we talked about it in the morning meetup, but so there's a lot of resonance in that book for me and what I teach, but, there's a level that there's other books, I guess it's not, but anyway, there's a level of performance that you leave on the table when you're not harnessing the fullness of your mental game. So the mind is directing everything in a way, right? Coming from your own belief systems, your understanding, your interpretations of situations. The more that we are in our emotions, the lower our capability and cognitive ability to make decisions is impaired in that moment. So if I'm high emotion, I'm low on the what is happening kind of moment. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of will find a way to balance and take in the situation and be able to, one, enact a flow state, which we all know about the term flow state. Most of us engage in flow state unconsciously, which means like there was a time in your life, as probably plenty of times, that you felt like you were quote unquote in flow. Mm-hmm. But if I told you, if I asked you, how'd you get there? You wouldn't necessarily know how to tell me that, because usually it's when you're engaging in something that you're enjoying. Yeah. And like, because children find it very easy to find flow state, but not necessarily to actively find flow state, but they're just like, yeah, this is fun. I'm going to go do that. Mm-hmm. As adults, we're trying to remember how to get there. And so one is to help them be more actually fluid in the process and not so like, I made a mistake, that type of stuff. So improving mistake response, better decision making, taking better personal responsibility for self, mm-hmm. and finding out a way to sort of put yourself in the driver's seat in your sport and become just a better teammate and a better, be coachable. And because a lot of times, it's not that athletes don't want to do well, because they do, and nobody makes mistakes on purpose. Like this idea, like, don't make mistakes, you shouldn't do that again. Like, they're not trying to make a mistake. In fact, it is the very effort of trying to avoid a mistake that brings about the mistake. So typically, like when we go back to the moment of me in the audition room, because I was trying so hard not to mess up, I was not in my flow state. I was in my head. I was overthinking. I wasn't in that place. Yeah. So when you go into something and you're like, okay, I've got this, you're able to be in a calm place to actually reveal, because I think it's more, and I think this is true for all personal development. I'm not adding on to you. I'm peeling away that which is hindering your awesome from occurring.
Ooh, say that. Okay.
So that's the idea. But how that manifests for each person. And our goal in the program that I was working with that particular coach was to make them great women as well as great athletes. It wasn't just to be great basketball players, because ultimately there will be a post-sports life. And the key is to make them ready for that in whatever capacity. And so sports gives you a lot of leadership, communication skills, interpersonal skills. There's a lot of advantages to sport. And I think a lot of athletes just kind of think that it's only like, hey, this works in sport, but it works everywhere. So.
I'm remembering something that you mentioned on the morning meetup, actually. Yeah. And even though you didn't mention it right now, it's the identity piece. And how, like, in your life, you've been able to make 2 large transitions, if not 3. Yes, the nonprofit one. At least 3 that I know of.
Well, I still work with the nonprofit, but so I still work with them, but it's very like whenever they have work. So it's not, I'm not an employee, but I just work for them because I love the work that they do.
Okay. So. Well, then 2 major transitions that I know of that you were able to leave with your identity, even though there were other personal development things that came with those transitions, it wasn't identity per se. Right. And I've heard you say, like you want them to understand that they identify not just as an athlete, but know who they are because of that post-athlete phase. That's right. And you're helping them get to that next step. Right.
So, well, it's kind of one of the other, I mean, one in the same, but it's not to help them only transition out of sport. Right. Because what happens is we confuse performance, results with worth. So if I lose, then I'm bad. If I win, I'm good. And sometimes that's conditioned by the response of the people that are around me. So like, let's say you're my mom, and when we have a good game, you're like, "Good job, honey. I'm so proud of you." And we have a bad game, you're like, "What happened? Like, what happened?" So as an athlete or a person, I'm internalizing good, bad. So what ends up happening is, because athletes who transition to the highest levels of sport, they play that sport for so long. Yeah. I mean, we're talking sometimes from 4 years old all the way up to, almost 40, and I mean, look at Tom Brady. He's even, I don't know, actually doesn't matter, but he's like beyond the years that most people would say you should stop, but he's performing still at a high level. It becomes then, when I'm done with that sport for that day or for that period, because even in the off season or after a game, a lot of athletes have a hard time putting down the sport. Mm-hmm. And so the key is to teach them prior to that exit point that they are valuable, and they are what makes the sport valuable. The sport doesn't make them valuable. Ooh. And that is, it's a seed planted. I can't say that it's like, yeah, I get it. But the earlier we can give that to them and get them to recognize that, we can improve mistake response. We can improve their ability to possibly take risks, because the quicker they latch on to that idea that they're valuable regardless, and they're just plugging into that sport, their awesomeness, then they see that, when they unplug from the sport or take their uniform off, still valuable, not just valuable because of who, you were on a court or on a field or whatever.
Yeah. Or in corporate.
Yeah. Or right? In corporate.
Because you had that brand all over.
And this is universal. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Because a lot of people it happens right. If I'm no longer a boss, if I'm no longer a CEO, or I don't have my 6-figure salary. I mean, we are, as humans, tend to attach to what we do rather than what we are. And they're not linked. Like, you were already awesome, and that's what made you good at being that job. So you can plug that into the next thing. But but that's tough because a lot of people got their juice from that thing.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. When I'm working in my program, we spend at least 1 week on mindset, because I know that there's an identity shift. There's a procrastination. There are some habits that you have to break when you want to be an entrepreneur, and you do a full program on mindset. So if I compare my 1 week to your full process, if you could leave our listeners with what they can actually do in that first session that you work with them, what are some things that you would do in your first week?
Well, I start all my athletes with the same step, and it's awareness. Just right now, like as you're listening to this podcast, okay, or watching this, wherever you're digesting it on, I would recommend just, what are you aware of? Right? Like, so me and you, I'm aware that I'm talking to Ariel. I'm aware there's a mic here. I'm aware there's a camera there, so on and so forth. So those are external things. Then what am I aware internally? Right? I'm aware that I'm feeling a little tired today. I'm aware that I'm full because you and I had a beautiful lunch, so stuff like that. So, and then emotionally, what am I aware of? And then, you can go deeper, right? So awareness, because all change starts with awareness. You can't change what you're not aware of. So it's like, I want to make a change. Well, you got to become more aware of what's happening. What kind of thoughts are going through your head on a regular basis? So definitely, I would first start with awareness. Then I would, once I become aware of what's going on, my habits, my patterns, my thoughts, those type of things, then I would enact a plan, or I kind of like what he said. And I mean, we talk about this because it is about making a rock solid identity in my course. But I think it is, once you identify your habits and patterns, what does a person who doesn't have those habits and patterns look like? So Todd Herman, he used to be a peak performance coach, but anyway, he talks about creating an alter ego, and I'm big into superheroes. So I think the real secret identity is that we don't know that we're super. So, because technically the secret identity was masking the person that was the superhero as the regular Joe. But the thing is that's what it is. We're all superheroes walking around as thinking we're Clark Kent, though. That's the only thing. So the difference is Superman knew he was Clark Kent. He knew he was Superman when he was Clark Kent. So the difference is we just have to learn. But
I'm like trying not to get out of my seat.
Sorry. So all that to say is I would erect a persona or an identity that supports what you want to enact in your life. And then the last thing I would say is just start working on how you talk to yourself and what you talk about to others. Those are the three main tenets. I mean, there's limiting beliefs. There's a lot of other pieces in there, but I think if I could just give three things, it would be awareness, become aware, and then apply that to your habits and patterns, and then think about your self-talk and like, how are you? And if you just change those three things in small ways, that could be huge. Like I'm not somebody who loves to do dishes, but after reading Atomic Habits, I decided I'm someone who loves to do dishes. And now it's like, okay, my commitment is to make sure that sink doesn't have any dishes in it. But why do the dishes pile up? Because I'm a person who doesn't love to do dishes. And because I'm attached to that identity, then I get frustrated by the dishes in the sink. And it's like, but I'm not willing to do anything about it because I don't want to do them. So, but once I say, okay, well, what if I'm a person who always makes sure they're done? Then it's like, it's small little steps I have to take along the week that now I don't have to do the 25, 30 minute of cleaning out the sink because it's always clean. So.
Yeah. You have taken us through a nice journey. Even though you feel like you've been all over the place, we literally have followed you from right out of college into enterprise, up the corporate ladder, all the way over to your passion. Got a chance to change your identity twice to really come full-fledged in a non-strategic way, as far as we know. Yeah.
It was all part of my plan.
And really, truly land in a place where you sound like you feel more whole. You sound like you have hit a place where it aligns to who you feel like you are on the inside. And so I'm just curious if you would leave us with any the top 3 responses that I get when I ask, why do you want to leave corporate America, are that you want financial freedom, you want to own your own time, and you want to build a legacy for this generation and generations to come. Now, this is not a solo job. In order to transition from your 9-to-5 into entrepreneurship, it's going to take community and it's going to take resources. And I've created the community of pioneers who are going to wrap around you and help you make that transition successfully. So if you're interested in leaving your job, go ahead and click that information below. Let's get into the community and let's transition from your 9-to-5 into entrepreneurship successfully. Now let's get back to the episode. There's someone right now who is either still in corporate and has never tapped into their passion, or just has an inkling of something they might be interested in, and they have no clue what it looks like to be whole on the other side. What would be that one thing that you would help them understand to get them along the journey? Well,
what came to me is Michelangelo or Leonardo, whoever put David in the rock, I can't remember, took David out of the rock. Allegedly, when he saw the rock, he said he saw the sculpture inside. So all that to say is that this situation in corporate and all of my situations led me to be good at what I'm doing now. And so it's just a sharpening or chipping away of these things. So find the aspect of your job that you really like and that your talents and natural passions or, leanings are well suited for. And then know that somehow this is developing or preparing you for the next thing, even if you don't know what that thing is. Mm-hmm. Because there isn't a thing that you could do that you wouldn't be able to take with you. Because the one thing they can't take from you, they can take your salary, they can take your title, but they sort of like the Dr. Dre thing. You can have all that because you can't take this.
I'm sorry for you guys. I'm clapping in your ears. But you just gave us a really high note to head out on. I swear. And one thing I haven't shared on this show just yet is just the philosophy behind the Work and Play podcast is to talk to people about their career journeys, their life transitions, and self-actualization. And your story literally hit all 3 topics, and your story is amazing. So thank you again, Bryn, for joining us. Thank you guys for listening. And if you have not done those 3 things, replay this, write it down, and do your work, because I highly suggest, I highly recommend that this be something that you do if you're interested in leaving corporate America. But until next time, I will see you guys later. Peace out. Talk to you soon.